The alarm clock buzzed at 5:30, same as every morning for the past 10 years. Kevin Merrick's hand shot out and silenced it before the second beep. No need to wake Aiden yet. The boy had another hour before school. Kevin pulled on his work clothes in the dark, flannel shirt, worn jeans, steel-toed boots that had seen more job sites than he could count. The house stayed quiet around him. This old place on Pine Street had belonged to his parents once. Now it belonged to him and Aiden, though the boy didn't know that yet. The kitchen smelled like yesterday's coffee and the faint scent of sawdust that followed Kevin everywhere. He started a fresh pot and stared out the window at his workshop. The small building sat behind the house like a faithful dog, waiting for another day of work. Ash Hollow stretched beyond his backyard, a town that never quite grew up or died off. The old lumber mills still operated, though barely. The lake still drew tourists in summer. People still knew each other's business, whether they wanted to or not. Kevin poured his coffee black and stepped onto the back porch. October air bit his face, promising winter. The workshop lights came on with a click, fluorescent bulbs humming to life. His tools hung in their places on the pegboard. Hammers, chisels, sanders, each one earned and cared for. This was his world. Small, predictable, honest. Uncle Kevin. He turned to find Aiden in the doorway, hair sticking up, school clothes wrinkled from sleep. "Morning," Kevin said. "Coffee's ready." Aiden rubbed his eyes. At 17, the boy had shot past Kevin's height, all arms and legs like his father had been. But where Jacob had been loud and quick to laugh, Aiden moved through the world carefully, watching everything. "You're up early," Aiden said, pouring coffee into a travel mug. "Same time as always." "I know. I just meant, never mind." Kevin studied his nephew's face. The boy had something on his mind, but pushing never worked with Aiden. Better to wait. "Got a cabinet job today," Kevin said. "Mrs. Patterson wants built-ins for her kitchen. You can come after school if you want." "Can't. Got homework." "All right." They stood in the kitchen, drinking coffee as the sun painted the windows orange. This was their routine. Brief conversations, comfortable silences, the understanding that came from 10 years of figuring life out together. Jacob should have been here for this. Should have been the one teaching Aiden about tools and work and how to be a man. But Jacob was gone, and someone had to do the job. "I'll be home by 6, Kevin said, grabbing his keys. "I'll start dinner. Don't burn the house down." Aiden almost smiled. That was one time. Kevin drove through town in his pickup, windows down despite the cold. Main Street looked the same as it had 20 years ago. Same storefronts, same cracks in the sidewalk, same old men sitting outside the hardware store pretending they had somewhere important to be. At Patterson's house, he unloaded his tools and got to work. The rhythm of measuring, cutting, fitting, it cleared his head better than any therapy. His hands knew what to do, and his mind could rest. But today his thoughts kept drifting to Aiden. The boy seemed different lately. Distant. Not in a bad way, just like he was thinking about things Kevin couldn't help him with. Maybe that was normal. Aiden would turn 18 soon. Most kids his age were planning for college, talking about leaving home, making big plans. Aiden never mentioned any of that. He seemed content to stay in Ash Hollow, to work with his hands like Kevin did. Kevin wondered sometimes if that was fair. If he'd raised a boy to be too much like himself, steady, quiet, rooted to this place. But what else could he have done? He'd given Aiden everything he knew how to give. The work went well. Mrs. Patterson brought him sandwiches at lunch and talked about her grandchildren in Portland. She'd known Jacob, remembered him as a wild kid who grew into a good man. She didn't mention Jenna. Nobody in town mentioned Jenna anymore. That was fine with Kevin. Some names were better left unspoken. By evening, the kitchen cabinets were taking shape. Clean lines, solid construction, built to last. Mrs. Patterson would get decades of use from them. That mattered to Kevin, creating things that endured. He drove home as the streetlights flickered on. Aiden's bedroom window glowed with lamplight. The boy was probably reading or doing homework. He'd always been smart, smarter than Kevin in most ways. That came from Jacob's side of the family. Kevin parked in the driveway and sat for a moment, listening to the engine tick as it cooled. This was his life, work, home, taking care of Aiden. It wasn't the life he'd planned as a young man, but it was the life he'd chosen. No regrets. Inside, the house smelled like spaghetti sauce and garlic bread. Aiden stood at the stove, stirring a pot with one hand while reading a paperback with the other. Smells good, Kevin said. It's just sauce from a jar. Still smells good. They ate at the kitchen table, same as every night. Aiden talked about school, a history test, a project for English class, some drama with his friend Mike. Normal teenage stuff. After dinner, Kevin cleaned the dishes while Aiden finished his homework. The TV murmured in the living room, but neither of them was really watching. This was their evening routine, as settled as everything else in their lives. At 9 o'clock, Kevin went to his workshop. He had a rocking chair to finish a commission for the new baby in the Morrison family. The wood was white oak, smooth under his hands, already shaped into graceful curves. As he worked, Kevin thought about the years that had brought them here. Jacob's death in the mill accident, sudden, senseless, the kind of thing that reminded you how fragile everything really was. Aiden at 7 years old, confused and angry, asking when his mom was coming back. Kevin learning to cook, to help with homework, to answer questions he'd never expected to face. The first few years had been hard. Kevin had never planned on raising a child. He'd been the bachelor uncle, the one who showed up for birthdays with tools instead of toys. But Aiden needed someone, and Kevin was all the family the boy had left. Somewhere along the way, it had stopped feeling like a burden and started feeling like purpose. The rocking chair was nearly finished now. Kevin ran sandpaper along the armrests, smoothing away the last rough spots. Tomorrow he'd apply the final coat of finish, and by the weekend, it would be ready for delivery. He locked up the workshop and headed back to the house. Aiden's light was off now. The boy kept regular hours, another thing Kevin had taught him. Structure mattered. Consistency mattered. Kevin poured himself a glass of water and stood at the kitchen window, looking out at the dark street. Ash Hollow slept around him, peaceful and predictable. This was enough. This was home. The letter arrived on a Tuesday, mixed in with the usual pile of bills and advertisements. Kevin almost threw it away without opening it. The envelope looked official, the kind that usually meant trouble. But the return address made him pause. Callahan, Brennan and Associates, the law firm that had been handling Jacob's insurance claim for the past 3 years. Kevin tore open the envelope while Aiden poured cereal into a bowl. The letterhead was crisp, professional, the kind of expensive paper that promised important news. Dear Mr. Merrick, we are pleased to inform you that the dispute regarding your brother, Jacob Merrick's life, insurance policy, and pension settlement has been resolved in your nephew's favor. Kevin's eyes skipped down the page, scanning for numbers. When he found them, he had to read twice to make sure. $200,000. Uncle Kevin, you okay? Kevin looked up to find Aiden watching him, spoon halfway to his mouth. The boy's dark eyes held concern, the same expression Jacob used to get when he worried about something. It's about your dad's insurance, Kevin said carefully. The case finally settled. Aiden set down his spoon. After all this time, company fought it for years. Said the accident was his fault. Kevin's voice hardened. Lying bastards. How much? Kevin handed him the letter. Aiden read it slowly, his face pale in the morning light. When he finished, he set the paper on the table like it might bite him. $200,000, Aiden said quietly. Your dad worked himself sick saving for your future. Company tried to cheat you out of it, but they lost. Aiden stared at the letter. That's a lot of money. It's yours when you turn 18. 2 months. What am I supposed to do with it? Kevin studied his nephew's face. The boy looked overwhelmed, maybe even scared. Kevin understood that. Money changed things, and change was never easy in a place like Ash Hollow. Your dad wanted you to have choices, Kevin said. College, trade school, starting a business. Whatever you decide. I don't want college. Then don't go. I could learn carpentry. Work with you. Kevin felt something warm spread through his chest, but he kept his voice neutral. That's honest work. Good work. Yeah. Aiden picked up his spoon again, then put it down. This feels weird. Money always feels weird when you're not used to it. How long before everyone knows? Kevin grimaced. In this town? By lunch. The prediction proved accurate. Kevin spent the morning working on Mrs. Patterson's cabinets, but by noon his phone was buzzing with calls. Old friends congratulating him. Neighbors asking if it was true. Even Mrs. Holbrook from the bank called, probably hoping to discuss investment opportunities. Kevin turned off his phone and went back to work. That evening, he stopped by Becky Rain's house on his way home. She lived in a small ranch-style place near the hospital, close enough to walk to work when the weather was good. Kevin had been friends with Becky since high school, the kind of friendship that didn't require explanations or pretense. She opened the door before he could knock, probably saw his truck in the driveway. "Kevin." She stepped aside to let him in. "I heard about the settlement. News travels fast. Judy Morrison told me at the grocery store. Said Aiden's going to be rich." Kevin followed her into the kitchen. Becky was still in her nurse scrubs, tired from a 12-hour shift, but alert as always. She had the kind of practical intelligence that cut through nonsense. "How's he handling it?" she asked, starting a pot of coffee. "Better than I expected. Kid's got a good head on his shoulders." "He gets that from you." Kevin shrugged. "Gets it from his dad." Becky gave him a look, but didn't argue. They'd had this conversation before. Kevin's refusal to take credit for raising Aiden well. As if 10 years of steady guidance didn't matter. "You worried about anything?" she asked. Kevin was quiet for a moment. Becky always asked the right questions, the ones that made him think harder than he wanted to. "Money draws attention," he finally said. "Some kinds of attention you don't want. You thinking about someone specific?" Kevin didn't answer directly. Aiden's almost 18, old enough to make his own choices, but still young enough to make bad ones. Becky poured coffee and handed him a mug. "You've been a good father to that boy, Kevin. Better than his real one might have been. Jacob was a good man. Jacob was a dreamer, always looking for the next big opportunity, the easy way out. You're different. You're solid." Kevin sipped his coffee, thinking about his brother. Jacob had been charismatic, full of plans and schemes. People loved him instantly. But loving someone and depending on them were different things. "The money won't change him," Becky said. "Not if you don't let it. It's not him I'm worried about." She understood immediately. In a town like Ash Hollow, everyone knew about Jenna Claiborne. How she'd married Jacob young, had Aiden, then disappeared when times got tough. Most people figured she was gone for good. But $200,000 had a way of bringing people back from the dead. "You think she'll come back?" Becky asked. "I think money calls to certain kinds of people, like blood in the water." She gave up her rights when she left. "Did she? Legally, I mean." Becky frowned. "I don't know. You never made it official?" Kevin shook his head. When Jenna left, he'd been focused on taking care of Aiden, keeping the boy fed and safe and as happy as possible. Legal paperwork had seemed less important than daily survival. Now he wondered if that had been a mistake. "You should talk to a lawyer," Becky said. "Maybe. Not maybe. Kevin, if she comes back and makes trouble. Let her try." The steel in his voice made Becky pause. She'd known Kevin long enough to recognize that tone. When he got that look, that edge to his words, smart people backed down. "Just think about it," she said. "Better to be prepared." Kevin finished his coffee and stood to leave. "Aiden's making dinner tonight. You should come by Sunday. We'll grill something. I'll bring dessert." On the drive home, Kevin thought about what Becky had said. She was right about getting legal advice, but part of him hoped it wouldn't matter. Maybe Jenna really was gone for good. Maybe she'd build a new life somewhere else and had no interest in the one she'd abandoned. But as he pulled into his driveway and saw Aiden through the kitchen window, Kevin felt the familiar weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. He'd protected the boy for 10 years. If Jenna came back looking for money, he'd protect him for 10 more. Some things were worth fighting for. Some people weren't worth forgiving. Aiden's 17th birthday fell on a Friday. Kevin took the afternoon off work, something he rarely did, to help prepare dinner. They kept it simple: grilled steaks, baked potatoes, green beans from Mrs. Patterson's garden. Becky brought a chocolate cake from the bakery on Main Street, the kind Aiden had liked since he was 7. Sheriff Kellen Rourke showed up at 6 with a card and a firm handshake for Aiden. Kellen had been Jacob's friend first, but over the years he'd become family. The kind of man who showed up when you needed him. 17, Kellen said, settling into a chair at the kitchen table. "One more year, and you'll be voting age." "Don't remind him," Kevin said, flipping steaks on the grill. "Kid's already too smart for his own good." Aiden grinned. "Uncle Kevin thinks the voting age should be 30. Uncle Kevin thinks a lot of things, Becky said, cutting cake. Most of them wrong. They ate dinner as the sun set outside the kitchen windows. The conversation flowed easily. Kellen telling stories about the old days, Becky sharing gossip from the hospital, Aiden talking about his plans for trade school. It felt like family, the chosen kind that mattered more than blood. After dinner, they moved to the living room. Aiden opened his presents, a new tool belt from Kevin, a first aid kit from Becky, and a pocket knife from Kellen with the boys' initials engraved on the handle. For when you start working construction, Kellen said, every man needs a good knife. Aiden tested the blade, sharp and perfectly balanced. Thank you, all of you. Kevin felt a familiar tightness in his chest. Moments like this reminded him how much the boy had grown, how close they were to the day when Aiden would make his own way in the world. Part of Kevin dreaded that day. Another part felt pride so fierce it almost hurt. At 8:30, Kellen's radio crackled with a call. Some drunk causing trouble at Mulligan's bar. The sheriff sighed and stood to leave. Duty calls, he said, hugging Aiden goodbye. Happy birthday, son. Becky left soon after, citing an early shift at the hospital. Kevin walked her to her car, the evening air cool against his face. Good birthday, she said, keys in her hand. Kid deserves good birthdays. So do you. Before Kevin could respond, headlights swept across the driveway. A car turned in from the street, something small and silver, not a vehicle he recognized. Kevin's muscles tensed instinctively. In Ash Hollow, unexpected visitors after dark usually meant trouble. The car parked behind Becky's sedan. The engine shut off, but the driver didn't get out immediately. Kevin could see a shadow behind the wheel, someone gathering courage or deciding what to say. You expecting anyone? Becky asked quietly. No. The car door opened. A woman stepped out, her movements careful and deliberate. The porch light caught her face, and Kevin's world tilted sideways. Jenna Claiborne. Older, thinner, but unmistakably her. She wore a black dress that probably cost more than Kevin made in a week. Her hair was shorter now, styled in a way that suggested money and attention. But her eyes were the same, calculating, always measuring what she could get from a situation. Kevin, she said, walking toward them with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. It's been a long time. Kevin found his voice. Not long enough. Jenna's smile faltered for just a moment. Then she looked at Becky, sizing up the competition. I'm Jenna, Aiden's mother. I know who you are, Becky said coldly. An uncomfortable silence stretched between them. Kevin's hands clenched into fists at his sides. 12 years of anger threatened to spill over, but he held it back. Aiden was inside. Whatever happened here, the boy didn't need to see his uncle lose control. Is he here? Jenna asked. My son. He's my son, Kevin said. You gave up that right when you walked away. I never signed any papers. Legally, I'm still his mother. Legally don't mean much when you abandon a kid for 12 years. Jenna's mask slipped, showing the hardness underneath. I didn't abandon him. I left an impossible situation. You left him. The front door opened. Aiden stepped onto the porch, probably wondering why Kevin was taking so long to say goodbye to Becky. When he saw Jenna, he froze. For a moment, no one spoke. Mother and son stared at each other across 12 years of absence. Aiden had been 5 when she left, old enough to remember her face, but young enough that those memories might feel like dreams. Hello, Aiden, Jenna said softly. You've grown so much. Aiden looked at Kevin, confusion and something else, fear, in his dark eyes. Kevin wanted to step between them to shield the boy for whatever pain was coming. But Aiden was 17 now, old enough to face his own demons. What do you want? Aiden asked. His voice was steady, but Kevin heard the tremor underneath. Jenna took a step forward. I want to talk to you. To explain. Explain what? Why you left me when I needed you most. It's complicated, honey. Your father and I. My father's dead. Aiden cut her off. He died 10 years ago. Where were you then? Jenna's composure cracked. I didn't know. No one told me. Because no one knew where you were, Kevin said. You disappeared. No forwarding address. No phone calls. Nothing. I'm here now. Why? Aiden stepped off the porch, moving closer to Kevin. Why now? Jenna looked between them, calculating. Kevin could almost see her weighing different approaches, different lies. Finally, she settled on a version of the truth. I heard about the insurance settlement, she said. I want to help you decide what to do with it. The honesty was surprising, but it made Kevin respect her even less. At least she wasn't pretending this was about love or missed opportunities. It was about money, plain and simple. I don't need your help, Aiden said. You're 17. That's a lot of money for someone your age. I already have a home, Aiden said, his voice growing stronger. I already have someone who takes care of me. Jenna's eyes flashed with anger. He's not your father. No, Aiden agreed. He's better than that. He stayed. The words hit Jenna like a physical blow. She stepped backward, her careful composure completely gone now. For a moment, Kevin almost felt sorry for her. Almost. I'm your mother, she said desperately. Then you should have acted like it. Aiden turned and walked back into the house, leaving the three adults standing in the driveway. Kevin heard the front door close, then the sound of footsteps heading upstairs. Jenna stared after him, tears forming in her eyes. But Kevin wasn't buying the performance. He'd seen her manipulate people before, knew how easily she could turn on the waterworks when it served her purposes. This isn't over, she said, looking at Kevin. Yes, it is. You made your choice 12 years ago. Live with it. He's my son. I have rights. You have nothing, Kevin said quietly. And if you try to hurt that boy, if you try to mess with his head or his money, I'll make sure you regret it. The threat was delivered in a conversational tone, but something in Kevin's eyes made Jenna take another step back. Becky moved closer to Kevin, a silent show of support. I'll be back, Jenna said, walking toward her car. Don't, Kevin called after her. There's nothing for you here. She got in her car without answering and drove away, her taillights disappearing into the darkness. Kevin stood in the driveway for a long moment, his heart pounding with adrenaline and rage. You okay? Becky asked. Fine. That was brave, what Aiden said. Kid's got steel in him. Gets it from his uncle. Kevin looked at the house, light spilling from the windows. Somewhere inside, Aiden was probably processing what had just happened. 17 years old, and already facing the kind of betrayal that would scar most adults. I should go check on him, Kevin said. Want me to stay? No, this is family business. Becky squeezed his arm. Call if you need anything. Kevin watched her drive away, then went inside. The house felt different now, like Jenna's presence had poisoned something in the air. He found Aiden in his bedroom, sitting on the edge of his bed, staring at his hands. You all right? Kevin asked from the doorway. I remember her, Aiden said quietly. Not much, but some things. She used to read to me before bed. She made good pancakes. Kevin waited, letting the boy work through his thoughts. I used to wonder what I did wrong, Aiden continued. Why she left. If I'd been better, maybe she would have stayed. Nothing you did made her leave. I know that now. Seeing her again. Aiden looked up at Kevin. She looked at me like I was a bank account. Kevin felt another surge of anger, but kept it hidden. Some people see dollar signs where they should see family. She's really my mother? Biologically. But that's all. Aiden nodded slowly. What happens now? Nothing if I can help it. You're 17. In a few months you'll be 18 and legally an adult. Nobody can force you to do anything you don't want to do. What if she tries to take the money? She can try. Won't work. Kevin's confidence seemed to reassure Aiden. The boy's shoulders relaxed slightly, and some of the tension left his face. Thank you, Aiden said. For everything. For staying. Kevin felt that tightness in his chest again, but this time it was pride, not fear. Happy birthday, son. The word slipped out before Kevin could stop it. He'd been careful over the years not to overstep, not to try to replace Jacob in Aiden's life. But tonight, after facing down Jenna, the distinction seemed less important. Aiden smiled. Best birthday present I ever got. What's that? Finding out I chose the right side. Kevin woke up Monday morning to find Jenna's silver car parked across the street from his house. She sat behind the wheel, drinking coffee from a paper cup, watching his front door like she was conducting surveillance. When Kevin came out to get his newspaper, she rolled down her window. Good morning, Kevin, she called cheerfully. He ignored her, grabbed the paper, and went back inside. Through the kitchen window, he watched her start the engine and drive away. But the message was clear. She wasn't giving up. That afternoon, Aiden called from school. She was here, he said without preamble. Kevin stopped, sanding the cabinet door he was working on. Where? Outside the school. Just sitting in her car. When I came out, she got out and tried to talk to me. What did you say? Nothing. I walked away. But she followed me for 2 blocks before giving up. Kevin's jaw tightened. I'll handle it. Uncle Kevin, don't do anything stupid. Define stupid. You know what I mean? Don't give her a reason to call the cops. Smart kid. Kevin forced himself to relax. I'll be careful. But when Kevin drove by the school that evening, Jenna's car was gone. She was learning to be more subtle, which made her more dangerous. By Wednesday, the reports started coming in. Mrs. Patterson saw Jenna at the grocery store, buying coffee and introducing herself to anyone who would listen. The librarian mentioned that a woman had been asking questions about the Merrick family. Even Father Mackenzie at St. Mary's called to say someone had approached him after morning mass. She's spreading her story, Becky told Kevin over lunch at the diner on Main Street. Playing the victim. What's she saying? That she's been trying to reconnect with her son for years. That you've been preventing contact. That she just wants to be a mother again. Kevin stabbed his meatloaf harder than necessary. And people believe her. Some do. You know how this town loves a comeback story. The prodigal mother returning to claim her child. She's not a prodigal anything. She's a vulture. I know that. You know that. But she's charming, Kevin. Always was. And she's telling people what they want to hear. Kevin pushed his plate away, his appetite gone. You should have expected this. Jenna had always been good at manipulating people, making them see her as the victim of circumstances beyond her control. That evening, Sheriff Rourke stopped by the house. He accepted a cup of coffee and sat at the kitchen table, his uniform wrinkled from a long day. Had an interesting visitor today, Kellen said. Let me guess. Jenna Claiborne came by the station, all tears and concern. Wanted to report that her son's guardian was being hostile and preventing her from seeing the boy. Kevin's hands clenched around his coffee mug. What did you tell her? That guardianship disputes aren't police matters. That she needed to take it up with family court if she had a legal complaint. And she asked about getting a restraining order. Said she was afraid you might get violent. Kevin stood up abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. That's bullshit and she knows it. Sit down, Kevin. I'm not done. Kevin forced himself to sit, but his muscles remained tense. I told her that restraining orders require evidence of threats or violence, Kellen continued, and that I've known you for 20 years and never seen you raise a hand to anyone who didn't deserve it. Thanks. Don't thank me yet. She's building a case, Kevin, making you look like the bad guy, so she can swoop in and play the suffering mother. You need to be smart about this. Meaning don't give her ammunition. Don't lose your temper in public. Don't confront her where people can see. And for God's sake, get a lawyer. After Kellen left, Kevin found Aiden in his bedroom, supposedly doing homework but really staring out the window. She's going to cause trouble, isn't she? Aiden asked. Kevin sat on the edge of the bed. She's going to try. What if she wins? What if the court makes me go with her? That won't happen. How do you know? Kevin looked at his nephew, tall, serious, carrying worries that no 17-year-old should have to bear. Because you're almost 18. Because you have a voice in this. And because I won't let her take you. Even if it's legal. Especially if it's legal. Aiden smiled slightly. You'd break the law for me? I'd break more than the law. The conviction in Kevin's voice seemed to reassure Aiden, but it worried Kevin himself. He meant every word, and that was dangerous. Men who had nothing left to lose were capable of terrible things. Thursday brought a new development. Kevin was installing trim in Mrs. Patterson's kitchen when his phone rang. The caller ID showed a number he didn't recognize. Mr. Merrick? This is Diana Wells from Family Services. I need to schedule a home visit to discuss Aiden's living situation. Kevin nearly dropped his hammer. What kind of visit? A routine welfare check. We received a report expressing concern about the boy's guardianship arrangement. Who made the report? I can't disclose that information, but I need to inspect your home and interview both you and Aiden. How's Friday afternoon? Kevin wanted to tell her exactly where she could put her welfare check, but Kellen's warnings echoed in his mind. Fine. What time? 2 o'clock. Please make sure Aiden is present. That evening, Kevin called Becky and explained the situation. She listened without interrupting, her nurse's training making her comfortable with crisis management. She's escalating, Becky said when Kevin finished. First the charm offensive, now the official complaints. Think the social worker will see through it. Depends on the social worker. Some are good at spotting manipulation. Others just follow the checklist. Kevin paced his living room, too agitated to sit still. What if they decide Aiden's better off with her? Then we fight it. But Kevin, you need to prepare yourself for the possibility that this could get ugly. How ugly? Court battles, custody hearings, maybe even criminal charges if she really wants to play dirty. Let her try. I'm serious. She could accuse you of anything: abuse, neglect, inappropriate behavior. Even if the charges don't stick, the investigation could take months. Kevin stopped pacing. You think I should just let her have him? Hell no. But I think you should be prepared for war. Friday afternoon, Diana Wells arrived exactly on time. She was younger than Kevin had expected, probably fresh out of graduate school, with the earnest demeanor of someone who believed social work could save the world. She inspected the house methodically, checking the refrigerator, examining Aiden's bedroom, asking questions about schedules and discipline and future plans. Aiden answered everything politely, making it clear that he was happy and well cared for. Your mother contacted our office, Wells said during the interview. She expressed concern about your welfare. My mother left when I was 5, Aiden replied evenly. I haven't seen her until last week. Uncle Kevin has taken care of me since my father died. How do you feel about your mother's return? Aiden glanced at Kevin, then back at the social worker. I don't need her in my life. I have everything I need here. Wells made notes on her clipboard. She mentioned concerns about your inheritance, the insurance settlement. What about it? She felt that a 17-year-old might need guidance managing that amount of money. I'm getting guidance from Uncle Kevin and the bank. We've already discussed college funds and investment options. Kevin felt a surge of pride. The boy was handling himself well, answering questions without getting defensive or emotional. After an hour, Wells closed her notebook. Everything looks fine here. Your home is clean and safe. Aiden seems healthy and well-adjusted, and there's no evidence of any problems. So we're done. Kevin asked. For now, I'll file my report, and that should be the end of it. But Mr. Merrick, if the mother files additional complaints, we may need to investigate further. After she left, Kevin and Aiden sat in the living room, both feeling drained by the experience. Think that's the end of it? Aiden asked. No, Kevin said honestly, but it's a start. The confrontation came the following Tuesday outside the high school. Kevin was picking up Aiden from basketball practice when he saw Jenna's car in the parking lot. She stood next to it, dressed down this time, jeans and a sweater, trying to look like a normal mother instead of a predator. When Aiden came out of the gym, she intercepted him before he could reach Kevin's truck. Aiden, please, Kevin heard her say. Just give me 5 minutes. Kevin started toward them, but Aiden held up a hand, signaling him to wait. The boy wanted to handle this himself. What do you want? Aiden asked, setting down his gym bag. I want to explain. About why I left. About why I'm back. I already know why you left. You ran when things got tough. Jenna's face crumpled, tears forming in her eyes. It wasn't like that. Your father, he made our life impossible. He was drinking, gambling, never working steady. I couldn't take it anymore. So you left me with him? I thought. I hoped. She wiped her eyes with a tissue. I was young and scared. I made a mistake. You made a choice. I've regretted it every day since. I tried to come back, but Kevin wouldn't let me see you. He poisoned you against me. Aiden's face hardened. Uncle Kevin never said a bad word about you. Not once. I figured out what kind of person you are all by myself. That's not fair. You don't know what I've been through. I don't care what you've been through. I care what I went through. Dad dying, being scared and alone, not understanding why my mother didn't love me enough to stay. The words hit Jenna like physical blows. She reached out as if to touch him, but Aiden stepped back. I do love you, she said desperately. I've always loved you. Love isn't a feeling. It's what you do. And what you did was leave. I'm here now. I want to make up for lost time. You can't. Some things don't get second chances. Kevin watched from across the parking lot, proud of the boy's strength, but worried about how much more he could take. Jenna was using every manipulation in her playbook: tears, guilt, false vulnerability. The money, Jenna said suddenly, abandoning the emotional approach. You're too young to handle that much money. It'll ruin your life. Ow! You'll make bad decisions. Waste it on stupid things. You need someone with experience to guide you. I have someone. Uncle Kevin has been managing my bank account since I was 7. He's never stolen a penny. Kevin's not your family. I am. Family doesn't abandon each other. Jenna's mask slipped completely now, showing the rage underneath. You little brat. After everything I've done to get back to you. The change was so sudden, so vicious, that Aiden actually flinched. And in that moment of shock, Jenna struck, not with her fist, but with an open palm across his face. The slap wasn't hard enough to really hurt, but it was deliberate, calculated to look like discipline rather than abuse. To anyone watching, it might have seemed like a frustrated mother correcting a disrespectful child. But Kevin saw it for what it was: manipulation designed to provoke a reaction. Aiden pressed his hand to his cheek, staring at his mother in disbelief. You hit me. You were being disrespectful. I was telling the truth. Kevin was moving before he realized it, crossing the parking lot in long strides. His hands were already forming fists, his vision narrowing to focus on Jenna's face. But Aiden saw him coming and shook his head sharply. Uncle Kevin, don't. The word stopped Kevin in his tracks. The boy was right. Losing control here would only give Jenna what she wanted. Kevin forced himself to stay calm. Get away from him, Kevin said quietly. He's my son. He's 17, old enough to decide who he wants in his life. And he's decided. Jenna looked between them, calculating her next move. Finally, she seemed to realize that the direct approach had failed. This isn't over, she said, getting into her car. A mother has rights. The court will see that. She drove away, leaving Kevin and Aiden standing in the empty parking lot. The boy touched his cheek again, the skin slightly red from the slap. You okay? Kevin asked. Yeah, I can't believe she hit me. She wanted me to see it. Wanted me to lose my temper and do something stupid. Why? So she could call the cops. File charges. Make me look violent and unstable. They drove home in silence, both lost in their own thoughts. Kevin was proud of how Aiden had handled himself, but worried about what Jenna would try next. She was clearly willing to escalate, to use any weapon available. That evening, Kevin called the lawyer Kellen had recommended, Sarah Martinez, a family law specialist in the county seat. She listened to his story without interrupting, asking occasional questions about dates and documentation. You need a file for formal guardianship, she said when Kevin finished. The informal arrangement you've had for 10 years won't hold up in court. How long will that take? Several weeks, minimum. And if the mother contests it, possibly months. What are our chances? Good, based on what you've told me. Aiden's nearly 18. The mother abandoned him for 12 years, and you've been his primary caregiver. But family court can be unpredictable. Kevin made an appointment for the following week. It would cost money he didn't really have, but some things were worth any price. That night, he found Aiden in the workshop, running his hands along the wooden surface of a half-finished chair. She's not going to give up, is she? Aiden asked. No, but neither are we. I keep thinking about what she said. About Dad drinking and gambling. Kevin was quiet for a moment. Your dad had his problems, but he loved you. Was she right? About him making life impossible. Your dad worked hard to support his family. Maybe he drank a beer or two after work, but he wasn't a drunk. And I never saw him gamble for anything more serious than a dollar scratch-off. So she was lying. She was telling the story that made her look good. Aiden picked up a piece of sandpaper and began smoothing a rough spot on the chair's arm. I used to wonder if I'd done something wrong. Why she left. Now I realize it was never about me. No, it was about her. She's going to court, isn't she? Probably. Will you fight her? Kevin looked at his nephew. Tall, serious, carrying himself like a man despite being only 17. In a few months, this would all be moot. Aiden would be legally an adult, free to make his own choices. But those few months felt like a lifetime when someone was trying to take away everything that mattered. "I'll fight her," Kevin said, "as long as it takes." The court hearing was scheduled for a Thursday morning in early November. Kevin wore his only suit, navy blue, purchased for Jacob's funeral 10 years earlier and rarely worn since. Aiden sat beside him in the hallway outside the courtroom, fidgeting with his tie. Sarah Martinez had prepared them for what to expect. Judge Morrison was fair but thorough, unlikely to be swayed by emotional appeals. The hearing would focus on legal facts, who had been caring for Aiden, whether that care was adequate, and what arrangements would be in the boy's best interest. "Remember," Sarah said, reviewing her notes one final time, "answer only the questions asked. Don't volunteer extra information. And stay calm, no matter what she says." When their case was called, they filed into the small courtroom. Kevin had expected something grander. A place where life-changing decisions were made should feel more important. Instead, it looked like a classroom with fluorescent lights and institutional carpeting. Judge Morrison was a woman in her 50s with graying hair and intelligent eyes. She reviewed the file while they settled at their respective tables. Jenna arrived with her own lawyer, a sharp-dressed man from the city who looked like he charged by the hour. She wore a conservative dress and minimal makeup, trying to project maternal concern. "This is a petition for custody review," Judge Morrison began. "Ms. Claiborne is seeking to modify the current guardianship arrangement for her minor son, Aiden Merrick." Jenna's lawyer stood to present their case. He painted a picture of a young mother who had made a difficult decision to leave an abusive situation, intending to return for her son once she was stable. He spoke of her right to reunite with her child and Kevin's unauthorized assumption of parental duties. It was all legal language designed to obscure the simple truth. She had abandoned her son and now wanted him back for his money. When it was Sarah's turn, she kept it simple. "Your Honor, Mr. Kevin Merrick has provided loving, stable care for his nephew for 10 years. The boy is thriving academically and socially. He has explicitly stated his preference to remain with his uncle. At 17, he's old enough for his wishes to be considered." Then came the testimony. Jenna took the stand first, her lawyer guiding her through a carefully rehearsed story. She had left, she claimed, because Jacob was drinking heavily and becoming violent. She feared for her safety and believed Aiden would be safer with his father's family temporarily. She had tried to maintain contact, but Kevin had blocked her efforts. It was a masterful performance, enough truth mixed with lies to sound believable. She cried at the right moments, showed appropriate remorse, and expressed her deep desire to be a mother to her son. Cross-examination was trickier. Sarah pressed her on specific details: where she had been living, why she had never sent child support, why she hadn't attended Jacob's funeral. "I was in a very dark place," Jenna answered. "I was struggling with depression and addiction. I knew Aiden was better off without me until I could get my life together." "And when did you get your life together?" Sarah asked. "About 3 years ago. I've been clean and sober, working steady, preparing to reunite with my son." "But you only contacted him after learning about his inheritance." "That's not true. I've been planning this for years." "Do you have any documentation of those plans? Letters you wrote but didn't send? Therapy record discussing your intention to reconnect?" Jenna's pause was barely noticeable. "Some things are private." When Kevin took the stand, he kept his answers short and factual. Yes, he had raised Aiden since Jacob's death. No, Jenna had never tried to contact them. Yes, Aiden was a good student with no behavioral problems. "Have you ever prevented Miss Claiborne from seeing her son?" Jenna's lawyer asked during cross-examination. She never asked to see him until last month. "But if she had asked, would you have allowed it?" Kevin considered the question carefully. "I would have considered what was best for Aiden. That's not what I asked. Would you have allowed her to see him?" "Probably not." The honesty seemed to surprise the lawyer. "Why not?" "Because she abandoned him. Because she didn't earn the right to waltz back into his life whenever it suited her. But she's his mother. Being a mother is about more than biology." When Aiden was called to testify, Kevin felt his stomach clench with anxiety. The boy looked younger than his 17 years, sitting in the witness chair under the judge's steady gaze. "Aiden, Judge Morrison said gently, "I want you to understand that this is your chance to speak for yourself. No one can force you to say anything you don't want to say. I understand, Your Honor. How do you feel about your current living situation?" "I'm happy. Uncle Kevin has taken good care of me. He's taught me about work and responsibility. He's been there for everything, school events, when I was sick, when I needed help with homework." "And how do you feel about your mother's return?" Aiden glanced at Jenna, then back at the judge. "I don't need her in my life. I have everything I need with Uncle Kevin. She's expressed a desire to be part of your life again. Would you be willing to try that?" "No, Your Honor." "Can you tell me why?" Aiden took a deep breath. "She left me when I needed her most. My dad died when I was 7, and I was scared and confused. I kept asking when she was coming back, and Uncle Kevin would just say, 'We'll see.' But she never came. Not for the funeral, not for my birthdays, not for anything." His voice grew stronger as he continued. "I used to think it was my fault, that I had done something wrong. But Uncle Kevin helped me understand that her leaving wasn't about me. It was about her." "What makes you say that?" "Because she only came back after she heard about the insurance money. If she really cared about being my mother, she would have come back when I needed one." Judge Morrison made notes, her expression unreadable. "Is there anything else you'd like to say?" "Yes, Your Honor. Uncle Kevin isn't just my guardian. He's my family. He chose to raise me when he didn't have to. He's been to every parent-teacher conference, every basketball game, every doctor's appointment. He taught me how to work with my hands, how to be responsible, how to be a man. I don't want to live with anyone else." The courtroom was silent when Aiden finished. Kevin felt tears threatening and fought them back. He'd known the boy was strong, but hearing him speak so clearly about their life together made Kevin's chest tight with pride. Jenna's lawyer tried to salvage the situation during his redirect examination, asking Aiden about his mother's love for him and the importance of forgiveness. But the damage was done. The boy's testimony had been clear and compelling. Judge Morrison called a brief recess to review the evidence. Kevin, Aiden, and Sarah waited in the hallway, too nervous to talk much. Through the courthouse windows, Kevin could see the small town square, people going about their normal lives while his world hung in the balance. When they reconvened, Judge Morrison delivered her ruling from the bench. "This case involves a young man who is just months away from legal adulthood," she began. "While I understand Ms. Claiborne's desire to reconnect with her son, I must consider what arrangements serve his best interests." Kevin held his breath. "The evidence shows that Mr. Kevin Merrick has provided exemplary care for Aiden for 10 years. The boy is thriving academically and socially. He has expressed a clear preference about his living situation, and at 17, his wishes carry significant weight." Judge Morrison looked directly at Jenna. "Miss Claiborne, while I don't question your love for your son, your absence during the most formative years of his life cannot be overlooked. The timing of your return, coinciding with his inheritance, raises questions about your motivations. Therefore, I'm denying the petition for custody modification. Mr. Kevin Merrick will retain guardianship of Aiden Merrick until the boy reaches age 18. The gavel fell with a sharp crack that seemed to echo in Kevin's chest. It was over. They had won. Jenna's face went white, then red with fury. She said something sharp to her lawyer, gathered her things, and stormed out of the courtroom without looking back. Kevin felt Aiden's hand on his shoulder and realized he'd been holding his breath. The boy was smiling, the first genuine smile Kevin had seen from him in weeks. "We won," Aiden said quietly. "You won," Kevin corrected. "That speech you gave, that's what did it." Sarah packed up her files, looking satisfied. "Good testimony from both of you." The judge saw through the manipulation pretty clearly. Outside the courthouse, Kevin shook Sarah's hand and thanked her. The legal bill would be substantial, but it was money well spent. As they walked to the truck, Aiden asked, "Think she'll try again?" "She might, but you'll be 18 in 6 weeks. After that, it won't matter what she tries." They drove home through the familiar streets of Ash Hollow, past the high school where this had all started, past the diner where half the town had probably been discussing their case over coffee. When they pulled into their driveway, Kevin felt something settle in his chest, a peace he hadn't experienced in weeks. This was their home, their life. No one could take that away now. The attack came on a Saturday evening in late November, 3 weeks after the court hearing. Kevin was in his workshop, applying the final coat of stain to a dining table commission, when he heard the shouting from the house. He set down his brush and listened. Aiden's voice, raised in anger. Then another voice, female, shrill, desperate. Jenna. Kevin moved quickly across the backyard, his work boots silent on the frost-covered grass. Through the kitchen window, he could see them facing off in the living room. Aiden backing toward the stairs, Jenna advancing with wild gestures. Kevin entered through the back door, moving quietly until he could hear their conversation. "Don't understand what you're throwing away," Jenna was saying. "I'm your mother. That has to mean something." "It doesn't mean anything," Aiden replied, his voice steady despite the situation. "You made sure of that when you left. I was 23 years old. I was scared and stupid, Anne. You were selfish." The word hit Jenna like a slap. She stepped backward, her face twisting with rage and hurt. "Selfish? I gave up everything for you. 9 months of pregnancy, years of my life. You gave up nothing. You took care of yourself, just like you always do." Kevin stepped into the living room doorway. Jenna spun toward him, her eyes wild. She looked different tonight, disheveled, desperate, like someone who had been drinking or hadn't slept in days. "Kevin," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "We were just having a family discussion. Family discussions don't involve breaking into people's houses." "I didn't break in. The door was unlocked. That's still breaking in." Jenna laughed, a harsh sound with no humor in it. "You turned him against me. You poisoned his mind. I didn't have to. You did that yourself when you walked away." "I had no choice." "There's always a choice," Kevin said quietly. "You chose to run instead of fight. You chose yourself instead of your son." Jenna's face crumpled, tears streaming down her cheeks. But Kevin had seen this performance before. He wasn't buying it. "Please," she whispered. "I just want a chance. I want to be his mother." "You want his money," Kevin corrected. The mask slipped completely. Jenna's tears stopped as if someone had turned off a faucet, replaced by pure venom. "You think you're so much better than me," she snarled. "You're nothing. A small-town carpenter who never did anything important in his life." "Maybe," Kevin agreed. "But at least I stayed. You stayed because you had nowhere else to go. No woman would have you, so you played house with someone else's kid." Kevin felt something cold and sharp settle in his chest. He'd been angry before, but this was different. This was a kind of rage that made men do things they couldn't take back. "Get out," he said quietly. "I'm not done. Get out now, before I do something we'll both regret." Something in his voice must have penetrated her fury. Jenna stepped backward, finally recognizing the danger she was in. "You can't threaten me," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "I'm not threatening you. I'm warning you. You've got 10 seconds to leave my house, or I'm calling the sheriff. This isn't over." "Yes, it is." Jenna looked around the living room, at the photos on the mantel, the comfortable furniture, the evidence of 10 years of steady family life. For a moment, her expression almost looked like grief. Then she grabbed her purse from the couch and stalked toward the front door. "You think you won?" she called back. "You didn't win anything. You're still the same pathetic loser you always were." She slammed the door so hard that the windows rattled. Kevin listened to her car start, then drive away with a squeal of tires. The silence that followed felt fragile, like something that could shatter if they spoke too loudly. "You okay?" Kevin asked Aiden. "Yeah, just tired of her." "How long was she here?" "Maybe 10 minutes. She just showed up, started ranting about the court case, and how unfair everything was." Aiden slumped onto the couch. She looked kind of crazy. Kevin had noticed that too. Jenna's carefully maintained appearance had cracked, revealing something desperate underneath. That made her more dangerous, not less. "I'm calling Kellen," Kevin said, reaching for his phone. Sheriff Rourke arrived within 20 minutes, still in civilian clothes, but carrying himself with official authority. He listened to their account of the evening, making notes in a small pad. "She didn't threaten you directly?" Kellen asked. "Not in so many words," Kevin replied. "But she was agitated, unstable. Did she take anything? Damage anything?" "No, just made a scene." Kellen closed his notebook. "I can file a trespassing report, but without explicit threats or property damage, it's not much more than a warning. What if she comes back? Then we'll have a pattern of harassment. That's something the prosecutor can work with. After Kellen left, Kevin and Aiden settled into their evening routine. Aiden working on homework at the kitchen table, while Kevin cleaned up from dinner. But the normalcy felt forced, like they were both waiting for the next crisis. She's not going to stop, is she? Aiden asked, looking up from his history textbook. Probably not until you turn 18. 5 more weeks. 5 more weeks, Kevin agreed. But privately, he wondered if Jenna would wait that long. Tonight had felt like a breaking point, like someone who had run out of options and was ready to try anything. Kevin double-checked the locks on all the doors and windows before going to bed. In the morning, he would call their lawyer, maybe look into getting security cameras installed. Some fights were worth preparing for. Some people were too dangerous to ignore. The call came on a Tuesday morning in December, while Kevin was installing crown molding in Mrs. Patterson's dining room. Sheriff Rourke's voice was carefully neutral, the tone cops used when delivering bad news. Kevin, you got a minute to talk. Kevin set down his nail gun. What's wrong? Jenna Claiborne was arrested yesterday in Millfield, about 40 miles north of here. Kevin felt a strange mixture of relief and wariness. What for? Writing bad checks. Trying to get a cash advance using Aiden's name and social security number. When that didn't work, she attempted to forge his signature on a loan application. Jesus. Gets worse. When they ran her ID, she had outstanding warrants in 2 other counties. Looks like she's been running this same scam for months. Kevin sat down on Mrs. Patterson's stairs, processing the information. Where is she now? County lockup in Millfield. Bail hearing is tomorrow, but given her flight risk and the multiple jurisdictions involved, she'll probably stay put for a while. How long? Hard to say. Could be months if she fights the charges. Could be years if they all stick. After hanging up, Kevin drove home to tell Aiden the news. He found the boy in the workshop, practicing dovetail joints on a piece of scrap pine. The concentration on Aiden's face reminded Kevin of Jacob at that age. The same focused intensity when working with his hands. She's been arrested, Kevin said without preamble. Aiden looked up from his work. For what? Kevin explained about the check fraud and identity theft. Aiden listened without interrupting, his expression unreadable. So it's over? Aiden asked when Kevin finished. For now. Maybe permanently, depending on how the legal system handles it. Aiden set down his chisel and flexed his fingers. I should feel happy about this. Or relieved. But I just feel empty. Kevin understood. There was no satisfaction in watching someone destroy themselves, even someone who had caused them pain. She made her choices, Kevin said. This is where those choices led. I keep thinking about what she said. About being 23 and scared. You feeling sorry for her? No. Just wondering if things could have been different. If she'd stayed, if she'd tried harder. Kevin considered the question seriously. Maybe. But people are who they are, Aiden. She showed you her true nature when it mattered most. By leaving, by choosing the easy way out instead of fighting for what mattered. They worked together for the rest of the afternoon, the familiar rhythm of shared labor helping to process the day's news. As evening approached, Kevin felt something he hadn't experienced in months, true peace. The threat was over. Jenna was someone else's problem now, locked away where she couldn't hurt them or manipulate anyone else. Aiden would turn 18 in 3 weeks, making him legally untouchable. They had won, not through violence or revenge, but through patience and persistence. By refusing to compromise on what was right. That evening, Becky came over for dinner. She brought a bottle of wine and an apple pie from the bakery, claiming they were celebrating justice served. How are you handling all this? She asked Aiden while Kevin grilled chicken on the back porch. Okay, I think. It's weird knowing she's in jail. You don't owe her anything, Becky said firmly. Not sympathy, not forgiveness, nothing. I know. It's just hard to hate someone completely when they're pathetic. Pathetic people can still be dangerous. Sometimes more dangerous than obviously bad people, because they make you let your guard down. Kevin listened from the porch, grateful for Becky's blunt wisdom. She had a way of cutting through emotional complexity to reach simple truths. Over dinner, They talked about other things. Aiden's plans for trade school, Kevin's growing list of carpentry commissions, Becky's stories from the hospital. Normal conversation between people who cared about each other. As Becky was leaving, she pulled Kevin aside. "You did good," she said quietly. "Raising him, protecting him, fighting for him. Jacob will be proud. Jacob should have been here to do it himself. But he wasn't. You were. That matters." After she left, Kevin found Aiden in his room, reading a book about furniture design. The boy looked up when Kevin knocked on the doorframe. "Thank you," Aiden said simply. "For what?" "Everything, but especially for not giving up on me." Kevin felt that familiar tightness in his chest. "I never considered giving up." "I know. That's what makes it special." Kevin was about to respond when his phone rang. Sheriff Rourke again, probably with more details about Jenna's arrest. But the news was different than Kevin expected. "She made bail," Kellen said without preamble. "Posted bond this afternoon and walked out of Millfield County Jail 2 hours ago." Kevin's blood went cold. "Ow! Someone wired the money. We're trying to track down who, but it was done through an intermediary. Where is she now?" "Unknown." "But Kevin, there's something else." The deputy who processed her release said she was talking about unfinished business and people who would pay for what they'd done. "She's coming back. That's what I'm afraid of. I've got patrol cars making regular passes by your house, but you need to be careful." Kevin thanked Kellen and hung up, his mind already racing through options. They could leave town until she was recaptured. They could stay with Becky. They could. "Uncle Kevin." Aiden stood in the bedroom doorway, reading Kevin's expression. "What's wrong?" Kevin told him about the bail and the veiled threats. Aiden listened with the same calm he'd shown throughout this entire ordeal. "She's really coming back," Aiden said. "Probably. What do we do?" Kevin looked at his nephew, 17 years old, nearly a man, someone who deserved to feel safe in his own home. "We wait," Kevin said, "and we're ready." Jenna returned 3 days later, but not in the way Kevin had expected. It was nearly midnight when Sheriff Rourke called, his voice heavy with exhaustion and something else, disappointment, maybe, or disgust. "We found her," Kellen said. "Single-car accident on Highway 12, about 15 miles outside town. She was driving drunk, went off the road into Miller's Creek." Kevin sat up in bed, instantly awake. "Is she alive?" "Banged up pretty good, but alive. EMTs took her to Portland General. She'll recover." "Was anyone else hurt?" "No, just her." Kevin felt a complex mixture of emotions. Relief that no innocent people had been harmed, disappointment that the threat hadn't been permanently resolved, and something that might have been pity for a woman who had destroyed her own life so thoroughly. "What happens now?" Kevin asked. "DUI, parole violation, probably additional charges related to the check fraud case. She'll be looking at serious prison time." "How long?" "Years, not months." "And Kevin?" There was something else in her car. A notebook full of plans. Your work schedule, Aiden's school routine, sketches of your house. She was planning something. Kevin's stomach clenched. What kind of something? Nothing good. But it doesn't matter now. She's done. After hanging up, Kevin sat in the darkness, processing the news. It was over, really over this time. Jenna would spend the next several years in prison, and by the time she got out, Aiden would be a grown man with his own life. They were safe. Kevin didn't wake Aiden to tell him the news. The boy had a basketball game the next afternoon, and there was no point in disrupting his sleep. Tomorrow would be soon enough to explain that their long nightmare was finally ending. In the morning, Kevin made pancakes, something he only did on special occasions. Aiden stumbled into the kitchen, still half asleep, and stared at the stack of golden circles on his plate. "What's the occasion?" Aiden asked. "She's in custody again. For good this time." Kevin explained about the accident and the charges. Aiden listened while eating, his face showing relief mixed with something that might have been sadness. "I should be happy," Aiden said finally. "But you're not." "I don't know what I am. She was my mother, even if she was a terrible one." Kevin understood. Family connections were complicated, even when they were poisonous. "You're allowed to feel whatever you feel," Kevin said. "There's no right or wrong way to handle this." "What do you feel?" Kevin considered the question honestly. Relieved, and sorry for what might have been if she'd been a different person. "Yeah, That's it exactly. 6 months later, Aiden's 18th birthday fell on a warm day in May, the kind of spring afternoon that made everyone in Ash Hollow remember why they lived in a place where real seasons still mattered. They celebrated quietly, dinner at home with Becky and Sheriff Rourke, a small cake, a few practical gifts. But the real celebration happened the next morning when Kevin and Aiden stood in front of the workshop they had built together. The insurance money had funded most of the construction, a proper woodworking shop with professional tools, adequate ventilation, and room to grow. They had done most of the work themselves, learning together, making mistakes, and fixing them. Above the door, they hung a simple wooden sign that Kevin had carved by hand, Merrick and Son. "Think Dad would approve?" Aiden asked, running his fingers over the smooth letters. "He'd be proud he didn't end up like her," Kevin replied. "He'd be proud of you too, for everything you did." Kevin looked at the shop, then at Aiden, no longer a boy, but a young man ready to make his own way in the world. The past year had tested them both, but they had come through it stronger. "Ready to get to work?" Kevin asked. "Ready." They unlocked the shop together and stepped inside, where their tools waited in neat rows and the smell of fresh sawdust promised a day of honest labor. Outside, Ash Hollow went about its quiet business. A small town where people knew each other's stories and remembered both the good and the bad. But inside the workshop, two men who had chosen to be family began the work of building something that would last. The money Jenna had tried so hard to steal was still safely in Aiden's account, growing with careful investments and modest interest. But the real inheritance, the one that mattered, was something that couldn't be stolen or destroyed. It was the knowledge that love was measured in actions, not words. That family was something you chose, not something you were born into. And that some things were worth fighting for, no matter the cost. As Kevin watched Aiden select a piece of oak for their first official commission, a dining table for the new pastor's family, he felt a deep satisfaction that had nothing to do with money or recognition. This was enough. This was everything.